All right, here we go with part two of the critique and review of work turned in for the depth of field assignment. Here's a nice ocean shot of the pier. It's a nice cloudy, overcast day. I like the shot generally. Again, I would just pull in a little bit tighter. We don't need all of this blank sky. If the sky itself were interesting and could offset the detail here, then we could use more of it. But since it isn't, for right now, I believe I would just take some of it out. Maybe not a lot. We could put that horizon line right at this thirds break and make it work really pretty well. It also lets us know, by the way, that congratulations, you actually do have a very straight horizon. I'm impressed. Good job. Good job. Okay, so we'll bring this in just a little bit to maintain the aspect ratio, although that's not really that important these days. And there's our shot. That's really all I would do to it. But since I have this shot, and it is so interesting color-wise, I want to show you guys a trick. If you wanted to really make this look a little bit different, suppose, for example, you wanted to make it look a little more like a sunset, a real sunset shot, then here's one way to do it. And this trick, by the way, serves a whole lot of different purposes. It just works really well here. I'm going to go into Image, Adjustments, and go to Replace Color. It's a very interesting function in Photoshop. And it brings up this dialog box. Now suppose I want to replace this color, but it's cool, it's reflecting down in here. If I just mask this off and replace that color, this would look phony. If I tried to paint over this, I would lose the detail in these waves. So here's a better way to do it. We've got these three eyedroppers here. The first one is going to pick our color. And let's say it's there. This fuzziness means the threshold. How much of that color are we going to pick? The middle eyedropper would let me add to that. And you can see it's starting to add here. Now I'm going to bring the fuzziness up a little bit. And you can see in this thumbnail, it's picking up the reflections down into the water pretty nicely. Okay, so that is the color. What we're seeing here, this is the color that I'm going to replace. Now, down here, I can pick the color I want to replace it with. So I'll click on this, and it brings up Photoshop standard color picker, rather. And I'm going to go over here and pick up just a little bit of this pink. Maybe I want it a little more orangish in here. And I want it subtle. So I'm going to say, okay, maybe I don't want quite so much saturation in it. I just want to get a different sense of that color. So with that, I can now give this a much different look with the replacement of just that single color. You can use this for product work, you can use it for fashion, you can use it in virtually any genre of work that you want to. And it saves an enormous amount of effort in trying to mask off work. Okay? So I did it just to show it to you. I think the shot was fine as it was, although this is kind of interesting, and we could then pick up another area and change that color. We could do some fascinating building here. But we'll save that for another time. Okay, and here we have a shallow depth of field shot. The water dripping out of this pipe is interesting. It's the real shot, when we look at it though, is right here. It's this water drop. that is the really interesting part. If we could see a well-defined ripple or a splash pattern, then we'd have a connection. But at the moment, this isn't quite there. Maybe we can bring it in a little bit with some exposure. We'll see. So that would be the first thing I would do, is see, is there anything I can do to enhance this particular area? And the quick way to see is just to go up to Image, Adjustments, Levels, and just drop those levels. Am I seeing anything down in there that really is a good splash? No, not really. So there's really not much to gain with that. So I'm going to cancel out of it. I may ultimately want to darken it a little bit later, but I think the first thing I want to do is take advantage of the fact that what I've really got here is a vertical shot, not a horizontal. So I'm going to come in and turn it into a vertical shot. Remember our basic rule. If you've got some strong leading line, give it a little room to move in there. So let's go ahead and take that. Okay, now let's see if we can help a little with the exposure. So I'll make my duplicate layer. I'll make that into a multiply layer. That's what I meant all along. You all knew that. And now I'm going to use a layer mask. And now that I look at that, I think what I want to do is reverse it. I could go back and recreate it again, but for right now, I'm just going to use Control-I and reverse it in place. I need a white brush. I want to pick up a pretty good-sized brush. So with the bracket keys, I'm going to enlarge this. My brush is set way down. About 20% is enough. And with multiple strokes over that, I can bring in a little bit of that to start giving us a little more of the data there. And I might darken this background just a touch. Put some information into this background and along that wooden pipe. Should I do it again? Let's find out. Yeah, that's a little better. But I'll bring the overall tone down. Now, what I can do is I would like to darken that pipe just a little bit. I think there's some information in there that I would like to bring out, but that's the only area that I'm really concerned about. So I could flatten all of this and go and do that, but let's just try our stamp visible. Remember, that was Alt, Control, Shift, E. And there's our new stamp visible layer. Now I'm going to do the proper type of burn and dodge. I'm going to do a new layer. I'm going to make it a soft light layer. I could do either overlay or soft light. I want to fill it. We'll say OK. There's my gray layer, my grayscale layer. Now what I want to do is I'll turn my palette into either black or white. In this case, I really want the black, so I can darken this. I'll make a smaller brush. See if I can put some tone and detail back into that pipe. Yeah, there we go. I'm also going to add a little bit in here. Okay, now pull a little bit in on the bottom here. Now we can really have a better sense of what's going on with that pipe. Okay, then we could flatten it and move on to any subsequent steps we were going to do. In this case, I think we'd be done. So I would just stop here. Where we have a nice sunset shot of the Ocean Beach Pier. The colors are nice and warm and inviting. I'm not sure there's much I would do to this one. I would start to leave it. The only thing I might do, I'm starting to see it naturally appear in this shot, probably because of the lens. I'm seeing a little bit of vignetting on the edges. And it not only doesn't bother me, I think it kind of helps push our view into it. I'm seeing it a little bit here, maybe from the shadow on top of this. So I'm going to want to see if a vignette would help this. I really want to look right in here as my main shot down this endless corridor. So I'm going to make a duplicate layer. I will make it a multiply layer. And now because we haven't done it for a while, look what's happening to that sky. Let me change my approach here in a minute. Actually, I'm going to change it now. I love what just happened to that sky, and I didn't anticipate it at all. So I'm going to pick up a layer mask, and with that, I now need a black brush. I think I want a little bit more. I want to put some of this detail back in here. What's kind of important for you in here is this is not the way I was going to take this. But once I saw that sky, holy cow, what a beautiful sky. How can I possibly not want to use that? Now, what's happened in the process is you can probably see the halos down this side of each of the piers. It's because I missed a little bit with this. Sometimes it's the result of a mistake, such as I just made. Other times it's simply because the digital process enhances those areas. In this case, I'm going to correct what I can as easily as I can, just by coming back and adding that tone back in. But you see, I've still got a little bit there. So some of it was my doing, some of it wasn't. Some of it's part of what's there. It shouldn't be. So here is an easy way to fix it. Wow, I'm glad I did that. Like I say, that was not what I intended. But what a difference. So I'm going to go ahead and just flatten that, just so I don't screw this up anymore. I'll make a duplicate layer just for insurance purposes. And now what I'm going to do is come and I'm going to do a little bit of selective cloning. But when I do it, remember this clone stamp tool is still a brush tool. We end up using it just like a brush. So I'm going to tell this to darken. And that means it is only going to paint on its own color or lighter. So when I come over here, let's zoom in to take a look at that. And I want to get rid of this halo. I can do that. Made a little error there. Let me pick this back up. Well, I'll have to change my brush, so I'll finish this. Do one thing at a time. It just makes life easier. it over here. It's one of the easiest ways to fix those halo issues that sometimes you create, like I did there. Sometimes it's just inherent, particularly in some wide-angle lenses. So now what I'm going to do is zoom in and fix that one little mistake that I made, which is getting off angle. When you're doing this, you need to make sure that you're pulling straight from the area you want. Now I need a normal brush because I'm now no longer filling in that light halo. So now I've really got to be careful with this. Make my brush a little bit bigger here. I'm going to come and pick up this. Now we can solve that. Now, here's what we've succeeded in doing. Let me enlarge this just a little bit. There was our original. And there's what we just did to it. This is, I think, a gorgeous shot. This is an interesting shallow depth of field shot. It definitely has shallow depth of field. You've got, what, maybe 1, 2, 3 frets that are in focus. But if you're going to do shallow depth of field, yes, I know, I asked you to do it, and open up and create that. Okay, cool. But the shot really needs to say something. And in this case, it really doesn't. It is shallow depth of field. To give you credit for doing shallow depth of field. But you want to be able to make some real statement with them. What would be ideal would maybe be to have a hand on the strings, and that was all that was in focus right in here. Or pick up the hand and fingers forming the chords and make that all that's in focus. Right now it really doesn't tell us anything other than the fact that you've got frets. Well, that's good. That's wonderful for guitars. So really think about, if you're going to do shallow depth of field, what is it that you are trying to bring out, and then really stick with that. There is an interesting anomaly here that is making me a little bit curious about how all this came to be. Can you see this area right in here? Everything from here forward is out of focus. So this sharp area also should be out of focus, but it isn't. So why is that? Is this a created out of focus part? Or what is in here that is allowing this one little part, unless you've got a cellophane lens with one little bubble that just came into focus? This is an interesting anomaly. But I'll let it go at that. Well, this is a fun shot, little crystal ball shot. Can we see the future in this little crystal ball? This is very, very interesting shot. The composition works. But you know what? After the success of that last shot, now I really want to see if dropping the exposure a little will bring out some of that sky. I don't know if it will or not, but let's find out. So we'll do that. And we'll tell it that we want a multiply layer. I think I'm going to drop that a little bit. In fact, what I'm going to do is leave that, and I'm just going to vignette this, but I'm going to do it freeform. So I'll pick up the black brush in this case. Remember, I've got a white layer mask, so to do the opposite, I need the black brush. I use the bracket keys to make the brush considerably bigger. I'm just going to come across the middle of it. And now maybe bring out that crystal ball a little bit. And let it really stand out. See if that helps them. Next thing I would do is look at this. Yeah, pretty good. You're off a little bit, but not much. Degree or two, maybe. So very cool. Nice idea. Good job conceiving this shot, putting it together. I think this works well. Now, what I might do looking at it is take some of this rich blue. Now, I want to set the brush to color. I want to make it really pale. And I just want to come through here and add ever so slightly, maybe a little more than this. There we go. A little of that rich, deep blue to that sky. We go just a touch more. Okay. Very cool. I like this shot a lot. Let's go on to another one. Our little crystal ball gets around some. So now we have a shallow depth of field. So are we levitating this ball? How are we making this work? I'm inclined to believe this really should be more of a vertical or maybe even a square than this long horizontal, because you've got this strong vertical line coming up through it, going from the hand to the ball and back again. And all of the rest of this over here tends to detract from that. So the first thing I'm going to do is crop this down a bit and maybe even look at making it into more of a vertical. How does it look as a square? It's not bad as a square. Okay, let's take that. Now, let's really make this stand out a little bit with a vignette. So again, we'll do a duplicate layer. We'll make a multiply layer. And again, because this is an unusual shape, or an uneven shape rather, I'm going to do it manually with the freeform layer, or a freeform vignette rather. Let's come down and lighten up this hand a bit. Now we can really concentrate on the relationship between the hand and the ball. Cool. Another clever idea. I expect to see someone with a wizard's cape, though, and a long pointy cap. Gandalf with his crystal ball. All right, we have a gateway to a trail. Let me guess, if only because I am so intimately familiar with the terrain around here, I'm going to guess that this is the trail to Iron Mountain. Pretty amazing, huh? We certainly have a deep depth of field in the shot. Everything from the clouds, which are quite a ways away, down to this foreground is sharp. Very cool. So we have that sense there. It is really too bad this sign is here. I mean, I know it's supposed to be there. But suppose that it wasn't. Suppose that we didn't have this sign. Well, there's several ways we can go about getting rid of it. The first thing I'm going to do is to give us a little space to work. I'm going to bring this post down. Oh, hit a key I didn't intend to there. Now, I could go through and pick up this grass, come over this, and slowly get rid of this post. Now, this is going at this angle, so if I'm going to bring it through the post, then I need to come and bring it up this way. Can you see that? But just to try something out, let me go ahead and finish up cleaning this up a little bit. Now, suppose what I wanted to get rid of was just this. Let me show you an interesting. Go ahead and select this. Since it is so neatly rectangular, I think I can make this work. And now what I'm going to do is simply hit the delete key. And it brings up this dialog box. Content aware is what I want. So I can get rid of almost any of that. And this isn't exactly what was back there, so I'm going to have to use a clone stamp to clean that up a little. What's interesting, it even tried to put some bushes and stuff in there. Isn't that fascinating? Oh yeah, so much cleaner without that. We could do a little better job of cleaning this up, but I need to move on a little bit. This is right square across the middle, and it is crooked. So I'm going to correct that. I'll bring down a guideline so I can see what's square. I'm going to select everything, the entire shot. I'll go to Edit, Transform, Skew, and I'm going to pull up that side. Now, if I wanted to check and make sure these should both lean in just a little bit, and they do. If I wanted to pull that out, I could do that. Bring in another guideline over here. Pull that out. Let's get rid of the guidelines here. Clear guides. Deselect, and there I have a straightened gate post. And now I could decide, do I really need all this sky? Probably not, but we'll leave it for now. All right, well, here we have a nice shot of this. Is this a bracelet or a ring? At the scale, it's hard to tell, but it's a pretty little piece. What would be nice, perhaps, is if it were bigger in the shot and overlapped this background and we didn't have all this dead space around it. So the first thing I'm going to do is make that space a little easier to deal with. Then I'm going to pick this out. Now, So I've got this selection made. If I do a copy and paste, I can do it on the keyboard with Control C and then Control V. Or I can come up here and do a copy, which will put it on the clipboard, then come back, and now it opens up paste. Now what's going to happen is this is going to automatically make a new layer with just that element on it. So if you look over here, you can see the only thing on the layer is this. So if I come here to edit, I'm going to do a free transform. The first thing we're going to do is scale it. And now, what I could do, I'm going to go ahead and deselect that. Or I'm going to take it. I have to hit enter first. Now, what I can do is come in with an eraser, or I could do it as a layer mask. Here's a good reason to talk about this. If I use an eraser tool, if I come down and pick up the eraser, I can come in. Let me get my brush a little bit bigger here. I want it to be normal. And I want it to be 100% because I want to see through to the background. And because I've got very hard edges on this jewelry piece, it's one of the few times I want my brush to be hard-edged. If I come down into here, now, I can... Now, I have a brush. I want to be on the eraser. Make my brush a little bit bigger. I can erase this, the background. But suppose I make a mistake. Now, if I catch it right away, let's say I make a mistake and take a notch out of that. If I catch it right away, I can simply back up a step and solve it. But suppose I don't catch it till it's way down and I've got a lot of stuff going on. Then I'm doomed. But if I make this into a layer mask, now, and I'll just use a black brush. Let me go ahead and get rid of some of this, and I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to come into there and knock off part of that ring. And I'm picking up the background here that I don't want. I want to keep this background. How do I correct those? They're somewhere up in here with all these other brush things. And if I've changed the brush size, by the time I realized that I took a notch out of that, if this were the eraser tool, I'd be in trouble. I would have to go back and get rid of all of this, back all the way up to where that mistake was, and start over. But with a layer mask as my means of seeing through this, all I have to do is change the brush back to white, and I can come and paint that back in. And then start over if I want to. I can paint all of this back in. So using that layer mask allows you, even if all you want to do is erase through to another layer, what the layer mask lets you do is simply by switching colors, then you can come in and work with this back and forth till you get it exactly right. Your other option is to go around the whole thing very carefully, select exactly the edges you're going to use, make no mistakes, and then just use the selection. Personally, for me, for my style of working, I find this to be faster. But what you can also see is the difference. If this had been a little bigger against the background, now I've got a lot more cleanup to do if I want to do this right. But I want to move on with this, so I'm going to leave this as it is for right now, because I want to show you. What I would also then do is vignette that background. So I'm going to flatten this layer. We'll make our duplicate. We'll make this a multiply. I'm going to set my feather. I'll select a rectangle. I'm going to set the feather here to, let's say, 100 pixels. And now I'm going to do a reverse layer mask. I'm holding down the Alt key. And now we've brought all of that down a little bit with a fairly subtle mask. Okay, I've got a couple more I'm going to do really quickly here. Here we have one that's a maximum depth of field shot. And again, we've got all this maximum depth of field, but in this case, the maximum depth of field is hurting us. Where is our shot in here? It's here. Maybe there's some other neat stuff going on in here, but our main shot is right here. We don't need this background. In fact, because we can see it, because we can see the house over here, we can see all of this other stuff, the fence posts, all of this, it takes our eye away from this. So our real shot is a much more constrained image. At the most, it's over here. We don't need the sky in that at all. And it's probably there. Take advantage of Photoshop's ease of cropping and moving that tool around to see what you can like, to see what works for you. Take advantage of it. Play with it. If you don't like it, don't do it. But look at it, make sure, and really start thinking, where is the shot in my shot? Well, cool. You did basically what I was talking about with the same shot, just moved in a little tighter and opened up the aperture, made the depth of field more shallow. That's cool. It's not exactly what I was asking for, but you're on the right track. But again, you don't need all of this other stuff. It's not telling your shot anything. It's not telling your viewer anything about your shot. But there's where your shot is. Okay, let's wrap up part 2, and then we'll get on with the rest of it.